For many people, the moment they hear the words, "you have herpes," a single thought shows up almost immediately. My love life is over. You might start imagining future partners rejecting you. You might even wonder if anyone will ever choose you again, and you may even begin questioning something you've never doubted before, and that's whether you're still lovable. But the truth is, herpes doesn't determine whether you're worthy of love, and it doesn't determine whether you'll experience a meaningful relationship. What often changes, though, is how you start seeing yourself. And when you start believing you're less desirable, less worthy, or somehow different than anyone else, that belief can start shaping every relationship decision you make moving forward. So today, we're going to talk about why that belief forms in the first place, why love is still very much possible for you, and what actually changes when you stop believing your diagnosis defines your worth. Hi, I'm Kat Dupree, and I help people to navigate life with herpes. And in this episode, we're going to take a closer look at something that affects a lot of people after the diagnosis: finding love. Not just dating, but the deeper question of whether someone can truly accept you once they know about your condition. Because when that question shows up, it changes how you open up to people, how willing you are to let someone get close to you, and even whether you allow yourself to pursue love at all. And this is worth looking at more closely because it's important to figure out where your fears about love are coming from, why they feel so convincing, and what begins to change when you stop measuring your worth through the perspective of your diagnosis. And when your perspective starts to change, your relationships and the way you see yourself begins to change in ways you may never have expected. So let's start off with where the fear about not finding love again is actually coming from. Because if you really look at it, this isn't something you always believed about yourself, right? Before your diagnosis, you weren't walking around thinking you'd never find love. That belief showed up after you got the news. And this matters because it shows you that this belief didn't start with you. It was a limiting belief that was created, and when that happens, it usually comes from what you've been exposed to over time. Think about it. How have you heard herpes talked about throughout your life? All the jokes, the comments, and the way it's used as an insult. It's portrayed as something embarrassing or something that makes someone undesirable. And consciously, you may not have given those things that much attention because they didn't directly affect you. But your subconscious mind did. It stored all those stories and beliefs about it over time. Those messages became associations. So when you received your diagnosis, your mind didn't just come up with your ideas about it. Your subconscious mind was activated and brought all those things up to your conscious mind. And this is where the fear that you'll never find love again after your diagnosis actually comes from. Now, here's something important to understand. Your brain is constantly forming beliefs based on patterns. This is part of how we learn. When something is repeated multiple times, your brain starts to accept it as truth. Not because it's been proven true, but because that's what you've heard over and over again. So if you've been exposed to the idea that herpes makes someone undesirable, your brain then takes that idea and applies it to you automatically, even if you've never actually experienced that in your own life. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychologist, once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that couldn't be more true. Because when those beliefs remain in the background of your mind, you don't question them, but instead you start living from them. Then they influence how you see yourself, how you approach dating, how open you are with people, and what you believe is possible for you when it comes to love. But once you start to see how those beliefs were formed, something begins to change. You realize that those fears didn't start with you. They were learned. And once you see that, they can be unlearned. And then you start to question whether they're actually true. So, now that you can start to see where that fear comes from, here's the part that can feel confusing. Just because something you know isn't true doesn't mean it won't feel true. Because once a belief is formed, your mind starts looking for evidence to support it. For example, you tell someone about your diagnosis. The conversation doesn't go the way you'd like it to, so it feels like confirmation. Someone pulls away and your mind connects it to your condition, even when there could be other reasons. And over time, that can make it feel like your experiences are proving your beliefs. But here's what I really want you to think about. When you consider the people you love and have loved in your life, what made them lovable? Was it because they were perfect? Because they had no health issues? Because their life was completely flawless? Of course not. What made them lovable had absolutely nothing to do with perfection and everything to do with connection. Their personality, their kindness, their sense of humor, their values, and the way they showed up with and for you. And none of that disappears because of a diagnosis. The only thing that changes is how you start seeing yourself. And when you start believing that something about you now is less than, you begin acting differently than you would have before. You may hold back. You may assume rejection before it happens. And you may feel like you need to explain yourself or convince someone to stay. But real relationships, they don't work that way. They're not built on one person trying to prove their worth. They're built on mutual interest and mutual connection. Two people choosing each other. And when you really start to see that, something becomes clear. It's not about whether love is possible. It's about realizing that nothing about what makes you lovable was ever taken away. And when you start to see that, something bigger begins to stand out. It was never your worth that changed, only the way you started seeing it. So let's sit with that for a moment, because if your worth didn't actually change, then what you're really looking at is the way you started seeing yourself. It's because after your diagnosis, your attention shifts to how you think other people will see you. And without even realizing it, you start measuring yourself through that. You start wondering if someone will still choose you, if they will still be attracted to you, and if they'll see you the same way once they know. And over time, that can turn into looking for confirmation, meaning you start paying attention to how people respond, and you try to read between the lines, and you look for signs that you're still wanted, still accepted, and still enough. There's a quote by Brené Brown where she says, "If you're looking for confirmation that you're not enough, you will always find it." Because when your mind is focused on not feeling worthy or good enough, it will filter all of your experiences through it. So even neutral moments can feel like rejection, and over time, that reinforces that belief. But the moment your worth starts depending on someone else's reaction, you start relying on someone else to define your value. Not because your worth actually changed, but because you started placing it somewhere outside of yourself. And when that happens, it can show up in ways you might not even notice at first, such as holding back instead of fully expressing yourself, explaining more than you need to, and trying to make sure that the other person is okay before you allow yourself to be okay. But real connection doesn't come from managing how someone else sees you. It comes from showing up as yourself without trying to earn your place. Because your worth was never something another person was meant to decide. Not before your diagnosis, and definitely not after. And when you stop looking for someone else to confirm it for you, the way you show up starts to look different. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You're no longer bracing for rejection before anything happens, and you're no longer shrinking yourself just to feel accepted. You're simply allowing someone to get to know you, fully honestly, and without trying to control how they respond. Because you're not asking someone to overlook something about you. You're allowing them to decide if they connect with you as a whole person. And trust me, the right person will. Not because you convince them to, but because they see you for who you are and they choose you. So, if you take away anything from this episode, let it be this. The feeling that you won't find love again isn't coming from your reality. It's coming from a limiting belief you learned and that can be changed. So here's something I want you to start doing. The next time you think about dating or opening up to someone, notice what your mind says. Does it assume rejection? Does it tell you how someone else is going to feel about you? Or does it start creating a story before anything has actually happened? And instead of going along with it, I want you to pause and then ask yourself this. Is this something I know to be true, or is this something I've been conditioned to believe? Because those two things are not the same. And when you ask yourself that question, it creates space. It gives you the ability to step outside the pattern instead of reacting from it. And the more you do this, the less control those thoughts have over you. Not because you force them to change, but because you stopped treating them like facts. And from that place, something important starts to happen. You stop approaching relationships like you need to protect yourself from something, and you start approaching them as someone who is simply getting to know another person. No proving, no convincing, no trying to control how it's going to go. Just showing up as you are and allowing someone else to meet you there. Because love wasn't taken away from you, and it's not something you need to earn back. It's something you allow yourself to experience. And that happens when you stop seeing yourself as someone who's lost it, and you start seeing yourself as someone who deserves it. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on audio, be sure to do that so you don't miss future episodes. Also, if you're tired of navigating your condition alone, come join us at Herpes Wellness. Membership gives you access to a private online community with forums, chat rooms, and monthly live streams where you can ask questions, make friends, find love, and get support from people who truly get what you're going through. If you want support on the go, then you can always download the Herpes Wellness app, available in both the App Store and in Google Play. The links to our website and the app are in the description below. And if you're concerned about privacy, we've got you totally covered. The app icon and push notifications say H Wellness. So if someone happens to see your screen, you won't disclose your status unintentionally. And if you're enjoying this podcast, or if you have something you'd like to share, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you the next time on the Herpes Wellness Podcast. Bye for now.